Bruce Lee was the first powerful image of an Asian American.
He had this magnetism and screen presence. When you saw him on the screen, it was hard for you to take your eyes off him.
Hi, my name is W. Kamau Bell. I'm a stand-up comic and host and executive producer of CNN's United Shades of America. I'm a longtime Bay Area resident, but before all that, I was a fan of Bruce Lee. So I'm honored to be asked by the Chinese Historical Society of America to support their fall 2021 exhibit on one of my heroes, Bruce Lee. 13-year-old me is freaking out right now. As I've always said, Bruce Lee is about way more than kicks and punches. I don't know how he saw me through the TV screen when I was a kid, but he did. And he taught me to stand up for myself. He taught me to fight for the underdog. And he taught me that if you work hard and are your biggest cheerleader and harshest critic, that you can accomplish things you could have never dreamed of. When I was a kid, I was such a big fan of Bruce that I actually had my mom take us on a vacation to San Francisco, and we even stayed at a hotel in Chinatown. And I did all that just because Bruce had been born here. Thanks, Mom. Not only that, I also practiced martial arts when I was a kid. I even found a Wing Chun teacher so I could practice the kind of martial art that Bruce Lee started out in. Shout out to Phil Nearing in Chicago. So I'm so excited that this exhibit is happening, and not only happening, but happening in San Francisco, Bruce's birthplace. And I can't wait to join you all in fall of 2021 at the Bruce Lee exhibit. We are all Bruce Lee under the sky, one family. Thank you.
Today, the Chinese Historical Society of America, or CHSA, wants to celebrate his life and legacy with you by letting you know about what's coming to their museum next year, a major exhibition called We Are Bruce Lee, Under the Sky, One Family. Some of you might know that when Bruce Lee was asked whether he was Chinese or American, he said, "Under the sky, under the heavens, there is but one family." I'm excited to share with you that this exhibit is slated to open fall of 2021. But to make this exhibit come to life, we need your help. So consider this your invitation, a call out to all the Bruce Lee fans and fan-malies to join us in being a part of sharing his work and his life and his spirit through this exhibition in San Francisco's Chinatown. Throughout today's celebration, we're going to be releasing messages and stories by folks who were inspired and deeply touched by Bruce's life and his legacy. And as you watch, we encourage you to share stories about how Bruce inspired you. Just do a selfie video or a tweet or share on social media and use the hashtag #WeAreBruceLee. And make sure to follow our social channels too. Now, if you want to join the party in a bigger way, I'm going to show you how. Please make a donation of any amount so we can fully create an exhibition with all of the features that showcase and highlight what a great visionary, athlete, and thinker and unifier that Bruce Lee was. Now, if you make a donation of $50 or more on November 27th, that's today, you will automatically be entered to potentially win one of these guys a fig pin in a raffle. Otherwise, this pin is exclusively available just for folks who donate $1,000 or more. So if you want to guarantee yourself a pin, become a sponsor of $1,000 or more before the end of the year, and you'll also get a special 3-year membership to the exhibit. And we also want to say a special thanks to the Bruce Lee Foundation and 2 of the world's top collectors of the Bruce Lee memorabilia will be showing, Jeff Chin and Perry Lee, and initial sponsors, the MG2 Foundation, the Louis Foundation, and the Robert Chin Foundation. And thank you so much for celebrating with us all today to celebrate Bruce's life and legacy and love for all. We are excited to see the museum come to life and to see your participation. For more information and details, go to wearebrucelee.org. I'm your host, Tuan Lam.
Hi, I'm Daniel Wu from AMC's Into the Badlands. I've had a rather serious obsession with Bruce Lee my entire life. At one point, I actually thought I was his reincarnated self because I felt like my life path was following his life path. You know, like him, I was born in San Francisco in the Bay Area. Like him, I went to university in the Pacific Northwest at University of Oregon. He went to school at University of Washington, which is my rival school. Like him, I was into martial arts, very seriously into martial arts, still am. And like him, I became a star in Hong Kong, went to Hong Kong and became a movie star, just like him. and then came back to the United States to do American projects, just like Bruce Lee. I'm so obsessed with Bruce Lee that my dog right now is named Bruce Lee Wu. We call him by his full name, Bruce Lee. You cannot call him Bruce, you must call him Bruce Lee, so that I can hear that name at least several times a day. Now, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I remember Enter the Dragon was going to be on TV. Now, this is back in the time where you did not have video on demand. I don't even think, this is the early 80s, I don't even think we had a VCR yet. So when something was on TV, you had to catch it at that scheduled time. And I remember it was coming on at 8 o'clock at night. And the thing is, my mom was not going to let me watch it. I'd only seen it once before. And I think Bruce Lee kind of bothered her a little bit. I think the violence she thought was too much for a young kid like me. The whoa, those sounds she thought was a little bit crazy. So she was not going to let me watch it. I asked and she said no. So I came up with this plan. And it was a Friday night that it was on. And I remember the night before Thursday, the day before, I went into our basement because I knew we had a old portable black and white TV in there. And I went and got it and hid it in the closet in my room. And so when Friday came around, my bedtime is usually 9 o'clock. But around 7:45, I told my parents, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to bed tonight early. And so I went to my room, shut the door, locked it, and supposedly went to sleep. But when in fact, what I really did was got in the closet, shut the closet, turned on Enter the Dragon, and watched it in black and white with the volume off. That's how obsessed and that's how badly I wanted it. It turned out to be a memorable experience because I haven't forgotten doing that. And it shows my level of Bruce Lee obsession was started from a very young age.
My name is Rick Kwan. You might know me best as a TV anchorman or documentarian. Like most Asian American men of a certain age, Bruce Lee was a source of pride and inspiration for me while growing up. We finally had our first Chinese American action hero, a man that was good looking, charismatic, and attractive to women. For so long, Hollywood and TV has always portrayed Asian men as being weak and unsexy. I remember when I did a documentary on the first Chinese American mayor of San Francisco, Ed Lee. His sister told me a story about how Ed gained instant respect from his classmates at their mostly white East Coast college just by pretending he was related to Bruce Lee.
I mean, Ed wasn't a big guy in stature, right? I mean, he wasn't big, but I think he figured that. And would they have known? I mean, you know, it's kind of like that, right? I mean, it could possibly be, right? Might not be his brother, but it could be a distant relative, so you wouldn't want to mess with him, right?
Hey y'all, I'm Tuan Lam, the founder of Go Inspire Go, and I'm here to ask you for your help to bring the story of Bruce Lee to life here in the San Francisco Bay Area and beyond. The Chinese Historical Society is working on a major exhibit called We Are Bruce Lee, Under the Sky, One Family. Now, if you make a donation of $50 or more today on November 27th, what would have been Bruce Lee's 80th birthday, you'll be entered in a raffle to potentially win this limited edition fig pin. Awesome, right? Otherwise, this pin will be available to donors of $1,000 or more, so make sure you get your donation in before the end of the year, and you'll also get a collectible 3-year membership to the exhibit. Only while supplies last, y'all. We are one big family, so we encourage you to give generously. To find out more information, you can go to wearebrucelee.org, and please follow us on social.
My name is Perry Lee. Started collecting Bruce Lee memorabilia back in 1967.
My name is Jeff. I'm from San Francisco, and I've been collecting Bruce Lee memorabilia since 1972 at the age of 11.
He was hip. He was cool. He was different. He knew how to dress. He knew how to dance. His scream and yell and his facial expression was really attached to Asian male. That drew people to him.
This is a promo for the Green Hornet. He has very beautiful penmanship.
Yeah, this is extremely rare, mainly because it's so fragile. Very few of these type of toys survive.
This is a book that was written by Bruce Lee.
And this is an example of one of his business cards. I think with every exhibit on Bruce Lee, it's always to show that he was more than a martial artist, that he was extremely multi-talented, inspire people by breaking these racial barriers. And to me, I think the most important thing about Bruce was that he brought people together.
I could honestly say that Bruce Lee was kind of like my counselor. Whenever I got picked on, I would fall back on Bruce Lee because he made me feel proud.
Hi, my name is Kenneth Eng, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm the lucky guy who got asked by the Chinese Historical Society of America to get involved with this We Are Bruce Lee exhibit. And let me just tell you, it's been such an honor. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, to be able to practice one's craft and have it be about your role model / hero. I mean, sign me up. So, I mean, I learned about Bruce Lee when I was 7 years old when I watched Enter the Dragon on TV. And at that point, I had never seen anyone so badass, so masculine, so clever and witty and funny, that I knew that Bruce Lee was someone I needed to be like and learn about. And so, you know, going through my life and learning about him even more, just learning about all the obstacles and all the difficulties that he had to go through, it just means that much more to be involved and just to emulate him. You know, I draw a lot of strength from Bruce Lee. I mean, Bruce Lee has meant so many different things to me in different parts of my life, but at this point, being 44, I know I draw inspiration from him, and my hopes are that this exhibit will help people understand or educate people more about what this man stood for and what his life was like and everything that he had to go up against. Because, yeah, it's strength in numbers, and I think Bruce Lee's story will help gather community and help create this energy that we're so craving for right now while we're telling our own stories and unpacking this history. So yeah, I think it's important to get our butts to San Francisco at the end of 2021. Let us all convene at the opening of this We Are Bruce Lee exhibit. Let's support the Chinese Historical Society of America. Let's do this.
Hi everyone, Charles Russo here is saying a quick hello from San Francisco ahead of Bruce Lee's upcoming 80th birthday, as well as next year's big We Are Bruce Lee exhibit at the Chinese Historical Society in Chinatown. For those of you who don't know me, I am a San Francisco-based writer and journalist, as well as the author of this book, Striking Distance, Bruce Lee and the Dawn of Martial Arts in America, which is a chronicle of Bruce Lee's very formative and really just all too forgotten time here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And you know, I wrote this book not just because it was a very fascinating and very unknown period of Bruce Lee's life, but also because I really was hoping that it would help to have San Francisco embrace him more as a native son. And hearing about this upcoming exhibit, I really just see it as a milestone in that regard of Bruce Lee finally getting proper recognition for his legacy here in the Bay. So I'm just so excited to check it out. I salute everyone who's worked on it up to now. And with regards to Bruce Lee's upcoming 80th birthday, I just wanted to say happy birthday, Bruce. I think that your legacy is diverse, dynamic, and just remarkably relevant all these many years later to so many people of so many walks of life all around the world. So thanks for allowing me to say a few things. I really look forward to speaking with people at this exhibit when it finally launches next year. And happy birthday, Bruce, and take care.
Hi there, I'm Alexandra, and I am a dancer, part of the Lily Kai Dance Company here in the Bay Area. Bruce Lee growing up was always a household name for being an Asian American icon, his style, and also his kung fu. It wasn't really until I joined my dance company and my creative director, Lily Kai, introduced me to Bruce Lee's philosophy when it comes to movement and also his wisdom when it comes to energy. He talks about being like water and how water is soft yet very powerful and how it can break through rocks and stone over time. He also talks about Kung Fu being similar to a chain with a ball attached to it. and how when you strike with that, that's extreme power. When we dance and you move energy through your body, that's the power that we strive for. As an all-female dance company, I think that concept of soft power yet very strong power resonates with us. I look forward to the exhibit in San Francisco, Chinatown.
Hi everyone, my name is Tuan Lam and I'm super excited today to introduce you to Tony Bravo, San Francisco Chronicle arts and culture columnist, to talk about Bruce Lee's style. And first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us, Tony Bravo. I love the name Tony Bravo, so I want to say it together. Do people always say Tony Bravo all at once?
Quite frequently, and I always tell them that I'm the heir to the Andy Cohen housewives fortune.
Okay.
I used to say it's the thing that people yell at the end of an opera, but more people know those housewives than they know high culture at this point.
I love that. Well, I'm a super big fan of yours and Bruce Lee, so I'm just grateful that you are able to share some of your style expertise, your sass. Can I say sass? In a good way, you know what I mean?
Sure. I'm also excited to talk about Bruce Lee. I first encountered Bruce Lee as a kid. My dad was a big Bruce Lee fan. He would have been a young teenager when Bruce Lee was still making films. We watched a lot of Green Hornet together, and it's not often that people ask me about action and martial arts film stars in the fashion realm.
Yeah, so when you were a kid, can you bring me back to that time when you first saw Bruce Lee and what you thought about him?
My dad is definitely the super fan. I will say that the Green Hornet was the thing that really sticks out the most to me. The style, that it wasn't just the suit and the uniform and the cap and the mask that he wore as Kato, it was the way that he wore them. It's not the outfit quite frequently, it is the person wearing it. It is the way they carry themselves in it. He made suiting look as comfortable, as flexible for movement, as easy to do a kick in as your gym shorts or a gi. I will never get over just this feeling of how cool it was that he could take this very formal, structured garment and make it into an action hero outfit.
Oh yeah, I know, especially with the yellow and black jumpsuit that we'll talk about later. But
Right.
yeah, I too have been super inspired by Bruce Lee, and that's why I wanted to join this project, because in the fall of 2021, the Chinese Historical Society of America, also known as CHSA, will present a new major exhibition in Bruce Lee's hometown, San Francisco, California, in Chinatown. It's going to be called the We Are Bruce Lee Under the Sky One Family exhibit. And Bruce Lee means so much to me on so many levels. I tell people personally, professionally, spiritually, and even style-wise. As an Asian American man, to see him be an action hero, to be, can I say that here? Anyway, I'll bleep that out. But just to be so out of the box, and like you said, so comfortable in his own style, made me think about, wow, like growing up in South Sac, my parents are Asian, so they were like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. And I wanted to tell stories and talk to people to inspire people to be better and do better for a living, right? And I think it's when I watched him and say, wow, this guy who looks like me, who's really outside of the box in terms of back in the 70s, when you saw him in these martial arts movies and such. He was just a breath of fresh air. And in terms of like not only having his own style and inspiring martial artists all across many different martial arts platforms, but in having his own unique style. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit first. I love that you zoomed right into what style truly means. And for me, style means that it's a way you wear things, right? Because two people can wear the same garment, but still carry it differently. It's the swag. It's the way you your energy, how comfortable you are. So what does style, first and foremost, mean to you?
Well, I think you hit on it. It's not what you're wearing, it's how you wear it sometimes. It's whether you're wearing the clothes or the clothes are wearing you. Mm-hmm. Bruce Lee is a man that in his personal life and candid photos and photos that we see of him out in public and also on screen, he was the one wearing the clothes. Something like the Kato outfit or like the iconic jumpsuit, those are pieces that could have easily overwhelmed another actor, and he absolutely owned them.
Yeah, and you're talking about the yellow and black tracksuit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that he became iconic for and wearing it and in the Game of Death, which was not finished because he had passed away while he was making it. But he was so aware of his sort of like on-screen presence and knowing how camera angles were, because obviously he, you know, he was the vision behind it and in front of the screen for the Game of Death. In terms of like the actual, let's talk about style first. Like, what did you think about this yellow and black suit?
I mean, it's iconic. I don't use that word. I try not to overuse that word when talking about aesthetic things, when talking about art, when talking about fashion or movies. But one of the easiest ways to know whether something has made a mark is to see whether or not it's been imitated. And everybody has imitated that yellow and black suit. It's certainly, it showed up in Tarantino's Kill Bill, which showed that it could cross the gender lines. It's shown up in variations across many athletic retailers over the years. And it's so distinctive because of that color, because of the color combination. It immediately brings to mind the agility and the sort of impossible flight of the bumblebee. It brings to mind things like classic race cars. I mean, he is kind of a race car in that look. He's got all the speed, he's got all the power of an engine. The way that he is able to highlight his movements through that bold color, I think is phenomenal. When I think of Bruce Lee behind the camera and how he thought of himself in front of the camera, I actually think the closest comparison that I can make in my knowledge is to Gene Kelly, who was very conscious of how the camera moved, what he was wearing, how his feet were highlighted, how his movements looked in a certain garment. I think Bruce Lee absolutely comes from that same kind of DNA.
Oh, I love it. And wait, so can I ask you who wore it better in Kill Bill, Uma Thurman or Bruce Lee? Just kidding, you don't have to answer that.
I think Bruce Lee was the original, and I certainly know that Tarantino has a fraught relationship right now with the legacy of Bruce Lee, and I hope I wasn't bringing up a taboo topic.
It's all good. You know what they say is often imitated, never duplicated, right?
Absolutely.
So how would you describe Bruce Lee's style? I would love to know from somebody of your expertise and somebody that I just like adore your style.
I think that he was really the innovator of something that I would call martial arts chic.
Ooh.
It was a combination of those athletic pieces. There's not just the yellow tracksuit, there was a red tracksuit that was associated with them, I think on screen and off. It's the idea of mixing kind of more formal Western pieces, things like the Kato suiting, like regular late 60s, early 70s suiting, which goes from being very slim and very sort of English inspired, being a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more bohemian. The collars are spread a little bit further. We see a little bit more skin. It's that combination of all those elements though. Even things like thinking about his classic white undershirt, that has become iconic in its own right. I think as much as the yellow tracksuit.
Yeah.
What really impresses me though is actually something that is almost anti-fashion. His image shirtless is not just a celebration of his own, incredible athletic body, but it was probably very revolutionary in the time that it came about for a man of color, for an Asian American man to be seen as not only a powerful symbol with those incredible muscles and that really tapered torso and all of the abs, the many, many abs, but to be, sexy. People of color did not get the benefit of being sexy without being sexualized sometimes in ways that were through the white gaze and that were very pejorative. There's nothing pejorative about looking at a shirtless Bruce Lee. I think that to those inclined towards men, there's certainly a lot of sexuality there.
Yeah.
And to people that just want to admire somebody whose body is an instrument and a tool. There you go. I mean, you could hammer nails with him. He's very hard.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? You hit on a point that just pierced my heart, because you talked about something that is not often talked about in terms of transcending stereotypes. Really, he bridged the Eastern and Western world. And back in the 70s, remember, who could forget Breakfast at Tiffany's, right? Where
that was, oh, God, I'm happy and dismayed that you brought that up, because it's, when you were talking about the box that Asian American public personalities were in at the time, I mean, it's not even a box for Asian Americans in certain parts of the culture. That is a white man playing Japanese. I mean, Bruce Lee maybe, you know, exploded the box that wasn't even there. He went so far beyond what the media expectation was.
Yeah, you know, when I was a kid, I remember watching Asian, you know, caricatures often played by white people, you know, like, you know, the 70s and even into the 80s, right? And it was just so refreshing and just like jaw-dropping to see somebody that is handsome instead of, you know, somebody that is a caricature with like buck teeth and angry and like broken English. I mean, he was sort of like this suave, sexy, right?
He's kind of James Bond in some ways. The way that he uses suiting, the way that he is active in suiting and looks as comfortable drawing a punch in a tailored jacket as he does when he's shirtless, I think is one of the greatest tropes that he helped invent as an action star.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I love the guy. He was known for the white Henleys too. I mean, from being shirtless to the white Henley to the yellow and black jumpsuit to like, oh, it's just, you know, there's so many ways that I felt like was this, might I say, fashion icon, right?
There's something there for everybody, like you pointed out. There's a lot of diversity with the kind of looks that he did. So if you're not necessarily somebody that's going to do the white Henley, like maybe you're more of a tracksuit person. If you're not a tracksuit person, you can absolutely do a cap and a little mask and be Kato for Halloween. There's a lot of diversity there in the types of looks that he did. And if you have the body for it, you know, maybe going shirtless is an homage.
Work it.
If you feel that you have the body for it, if you're comfortable for it, that can be another homage to Bruce, being comfortable with your form.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that. And yeah, I mean, even people, it transcended just the Asian Americans too. I mean, like, look at modern day, bless his heart, the late, like Kobe Bryant, right? He had one of his shoes, you know, turned into like the famous yellow and black color of the tracksuit. And I thought that was pretty, you know, amazing how like you see kind of like a, you know, a rise in his popularity now. But before we even go there, I wanted to ask you, back in the 70s, what do you think, I mean, this is all kind of conjecture just based on your expertise. But
it was not around in the 70s.
well, in terms of you studying, you know, and interviewing people of that era. So what do you think, or, you know, what do you think about his, you know, his influences in fashion?
I think it's really interesting that the 70s become an era that is really when sort of the bohemian part of the 60s fully takes off. You see this great crisscross lace shirts on him that are very much kind of a remnant of kind of a certain Woodstock style. You see the more relaxed suiting. You see the spread collars. I think that he embodies that with as much ease as he embodies the slimmer, more English lines of suiting that are very evocative of the 60s. There's also just sort of a comfort level, I think, with his sexuality and the way that he presented himself in clothes. Some of those pants are definitely designed to show off his form. The spread collars, again, the crisscross shirts. You see a fair amount of chest in those. And the 70s were a moment when men started to feel comfortable again with a certain type of peacocking, with a certain type of sexual freedom. I mean, this is a moment where the sexual revolution is still very much in full swing. And it's a moment where men are also kind of taking some of that freedom and applying it to how they express themselves.
Essentially, I really believe that fashion and style is really about how you show yourself to the world. That's why I think it's so important that when you wear a ring or a shirt or whatever, you know, I'm actually trying to do this whole, I'm not trying to be Bruce Lee here, or compare myself, but the whole, you know, athletic chic, as you say, with this sweatshirt that's a little bit more.
Yeah, and the high contrast black and white, that's a good look.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so do you...
Also, we have to talk about the haircut. I mean, that Bruce Lee's haircut, I think, is equally as iconic as anything else that he did in fashion. And it's really interesting if you stop and kind of analyze the slightly longer in the back, softer bang, a little bit on the sides look that I think we think of as the signature. it's actually a slightly feminine haircut. It's not like 100% different from maybe kind of what Liza Minnelli or
Farrah
Pixie
Fawcett.
Cut is kind of known to be. Farrah Fawcett was longer. It was more of a feathered look. This is maybe almost Dorothy Hamill-ish. It really is something that I think when you see it on a man, especially an Asian American, an Asian man, somebody with dark hair, I think it's immediately evocative of Bruce Lee. And it's not necessarily a look that I think every man wants to step into, but he absolutely, I think, made it a style signature of his own. But speaking of the sunglasses, by the way, I was going through my closet figuring out what the most Bruce Lee item I had was. I probably have a lot of sunglasses that could easily fall into the Bruce Lee category. He liked this kind of aviator line up top. He did the bigger hard shell glasses frequently. And these are from this season. I mean, this is a designer that I think is clearly still working within the milieu of the 70s, and maybe it's even a little bit of a call out to Bruce Lee.
Oh, I love that you did that, because I was trying to think about what's the most Bruce Lee thing that I could wear. So I love this. I also wanted to ask you, what is the brand of the glasses? Because I have a pair of Gucci glasses that look like that too.
Those are Tom Ford.
Oh, Tom Ford, yeah, because mine were, I think, from like 5-6 years ago. And again, it's still like classic, right?
They have become perennial pieces. I think that sort of the era that we think of as Bruce Lee's heyday, late 60s, early 70s, it's just become a part of the ongoing fashion conversation. We certainly have cycles of retro where we're interested in more specific moments within those decades than others, but that particular chunk of time, I think, is just sort of entered into eternal good taste and will be, I think that people will continue to revisit it in the fashion industry.
Oh, that's now, speaking about the future and forward thinking in terms of fashion, why was Bruce Lee's style so influential just so many generations later, do you think?
You know, the biggest answer, the biggest reason I can give for that is that I think Bruce Lee is a icon fashion-wise that's really accessible to men that might not be comfortable otherwise talking about fashion for whatever weird gendered associations they have around fashion being feminine or not being a sufficiently masculine pursuit. Nobody is going to doubt Bruce Lee's either masculinity, his physical strength, and he looked as good and used in clothing and used clothing as effectively as people that sort of train themselves to become fashion icons. There are people that really consciously follow fashion and try and use it in the development of their public persona, for whom it's really more of a cornerstone. For Bruce Lee, I think it's a nice kind of footnote at times. That's not to diminish his impacts on style, but most of us, the first thing we're going to think of when we think of Bruce Lee is the martial arts, is the film. If you take a moment though, and you look at something through a style lens, through an aesthetic lens, you see that there is an impact there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think going back to his keen sense of fashion and just awareness of who he was and how he wanted to show himself to the world, he definitely wore the clothes, right?
That mix of East and West that you talked about too, I think that that's fascinating, that he not only existed as a bridge cinematically between those worlds, but in the way that he mixed elements from both cultures.
And that's why I'm so excited about this exhibit opening at CHSA in San Francisco's Chinatown the fall of next year, because what it's going to do is, gosh, there's so many layers peeled back. I love layering clothes too, just like I love layering interior design, and I love your backdrop, by the way, super fabulous. But just there, you can peel back the different layers with the different generations. When you I want to take my younger niece and nephew, who's 14 and 12, to the exhibit to kind of share Bruce Lee's story. And like you said, he was an icon in so many ways, in martial arts and in Hollywood and an Asian American man, but also it's seldom talked about, his sense of style and finesse and who he was. So I can sit here and talk to you all day about style and fashion. And I just thank you, Tony, so much for your time. today. And again, Tony Bravo, San Francisco Chronicles art and culture columnist. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited that Bruce Lee is returning home to San Francisco next year.
Yeah, and I'm also, again, so excited that we talked about the East, the West, the male energy, the female energy, the athletic, the suave, the shirt, the no shirt. And so
there's actually one thing we haven't touched on, if we have a quick minute, that I would love to just get in.
Yes.
I also think it's interesting to consider Brandon Lee's style legacy in there. They both have two very distinctive, very different impacts in fashion. We've talked about all of Bruce Lee's. Brandon's style signature, I think, is his role as the Crow. That's not only his sort of most well-known movie, but that in itself is an iconic look. And it's not often that within two generations like that in a family, you get two performers, two people that have such strong signature aesthetics that continue to reverberate in the culture. I think that Brandon also reverberates just like Bruce does.
Wow. I mean, I love that we were talking about the generations to come and you backtracked a little bit and moved forward a little bit in this like brilliant way. And then talking about Brandon style. Can you just talk a little bit about how they were similar and different?
I mean, I think in films other than The Crow, kind of more conventional martial arts movies, you see a lot of the same kind of gi influenced pants or a lot of shirtlessness. I remember a lot of shirtless Brandon Lee movies when I was a kid.
So do I.
And that look that he has in The Crow, that kind of combination of superhero and gothic, is maybe the equivalent to the yellow and black tracksuit for Brandon. It's athletic. It sort of transcends what we might immediately associate with martial arts. It's almost like a superhero look. And I mean, back in the before times prior to COVID, I feel like there was never a Halloween party that I went to where there wasn't at least one guy or sometimes a woman dressed as Brandon Lee as the Crow with the white face and the very distinctive makeup and the black look and underneath. So, you could have a Halloween party where you could see, Bruce and Brandon in theory. The style legacy is that strong.
Wow. And even today, I mean, again, somebody that they both just wear the clothes so well. They
wear the clothes don't wear them.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. I can talk to you about Brandon Lee in a whole nother episode because I just loved watching him and seeing. I never thought about him in terms of the influences that he had from his father, but you're right. I mean, now I could see the classic style. Some of his in The Crow, it's more like avant-garde, but yet modern, but yet athletic. There's so many different layers that just are so interesting.
That's what makes an icon, right?
Yes, exactly. And thank you, Mr. Icon yourself. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your sense of style. Thank you so much, Tony. And we also wanted to say a thank you to Shannon Lee and the Bruce Lee Family Company for allowing us to use the images that we're going to be showing here and for their support on the exhibition in San Francisco Bay Area. You can follow them on Instagram at Bruce Lee. And is there somewhere where we can follow you, Tony, on social?
At Tony Bravo SF on Instagram and Twitter.
Perfect. And I'd also like to thank you everyone for watching today. You can also support the exhibit as well and join the Bruce Lee Party. Visit wearebrucelee.org and please follow us on social. Tony, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Chin and I'm one of the top Bruce Lee collectors in the world. I've been asked to loan part of my collection to the upcoming Bruce Lee exhibition here in San Francisco, Chinatown. Here are 5 facts about Bruce Lee and the time that he lived in Chinatown that I would like to share with you. Fact number 1, Bruce Lee starred in his very first movie here in Chinatown. The title of the movie was called Golden Gate Girl. At the time, Bruce Lee was only 3 months old, but he basically played a baby prop that his father, who also starred in the movie, held him. And believe it or not, he portrayed a little baby girl. Fact number 2, Bruce Lee did odd jobs when he lived here in San Francisco, and one of them was teaching cha-cha dancing. Bruce Lee was a 1958 cha-cha champion in Hong Kong. And he loved to teach the cha-cha to whoever wanted to pay him. Fact number 3. Bruce Lee also worked as a waiter here in Jackson Street. The name of the restaurant was the Kum Hon Restaurant, and it was directly across the street from where he lived with his godfather. Unfortunately, Bruce Lee's job as a waiter only lasted about a week because he did not like to serve people. Because in Hong Kong, he was a child star and he had servants himself that served him. Fact number 4. Bruce Lee stormed a radio station on Stockton Street. Chinatown had several radio stations, and this radio station was called The Voice of Chinatown. Bruce Lee stormed in and announced, "I am Bruce Lee," thinking that he was very famous because at that time he had done around 20 films as a child. Unfortunately, the people in the radio station said, "Who are you? Did you make an appointment here?" and escorted him out of the building. Bruce Lee probably felt very embarrassed. Fact number 5. Bruce Lee was drafted by the Selective Service. About a month after Bruce Lee arrived in San Francisco in May of 1959, he had to register for the Selective Service. Bruce Lee did not plan to join the US military, and he was very scared. Fortunately, he failed his physical. That kind of sounds unbelievable, but he did. And if you want to learn more details on that or about the other stories that I've shared, please come to our exhibit at the Chinese Historical Society in San Francisco, Chinatown. Happy 80th birthday, Bruce Lee. Thank you for your inspiration.
Hi, I'm Jane Chin, project lead for We Are Bruce Lee, Under the Sky, One Family. It's my pleasure to be here today on what would have been Bruce Lee's 80th birthday. I grew up in San Francisco, Chinatown, the first Chinatown in the United States. It was a gateway community that was alive and thriving with culture and restaurants and shops. For my parents and for so many other Chinese Americans, Chinatown was a place where they found strength and courage and confidence to overcome the challenges and to succeed in a country where we were once strangers. That was the Chinatown of yesterday. Today, the pandemic has taken its toll on the neighborhood. But what will it take to bring it back to its vibrancy? Well, let me tell you about the We Are Bruce Lee Under the Sky One Family. It's going to be a new and major exhibition coming to San Francisco Chinatown in the fall of 2021. It's a community where Bruce Lee was born, so it's fitting. Bruce Lee was more than an actor and an athlete. He was a visionary, an entrepreneur, a thinker, a philosopher. He fought against discrimination, and he worked with people from all backgrounds. We can learn so much from Bruce Lee today, particularly as people from around the world are pushing back against xenophobia and social injustice. And you can help bring the lessons of Bruce Lee to San Francisco Chinatown. Please consider supporting us with a donation of $50 or a sponsorship of $1,000 or more. Visit us at wearebrucelee.org. Thank you so much. Your support would make the world of difference. Thank you.
My name is Daniel Arca Inasano, or I'm known as Dan Inasano. I became a student of Bruce Lee in the year 1964 and was appointed to teach his Chinatown school in Los Angeles and in the Los Angeles area in 1967. I've enjoyed my time with Bruce Lee. He taught me many different things. He taught me how to research, how to experiment, how to create, research, experiment, and then develop different things. And it's in the research that I learned a lot of things from him. back in the day, when people just studied one style, Bruce Lee was interested in studying other systems. Although he was a Chinese martial artist, he engaged in research in the Korean arts, into the Chinese, other Chinese arts, into the Japanese arts, Okinawan arts. He researched Thai boxing, he researched French savate, he researched judo and grappling, and I liked that part because he was constantly researching. I hope there's a coming up event called the Bruce Lee exhibit in San Francisco, Chinatown, that I hope people will attend. There's never been a day that I haven't thought about Bruce Lee. He's always been in my mind. I'm so lucky to be his student, and I think that I'll cherish the time. I had the privilege of teaching his son Brandon Lee, and he was just like his father. And I'm sorry that his lifespan wasn't as long, but I enjoyed teaching him also. So with the Lee family, I enjoyed the Lee family. Phoebe Lee, Robert Lee, his brother, older brother, and his mother, Grace. I used to visit them a lot. And I miss the family, and I miss Brandon, I miss Seafood Bruce. So I hope this upcoming exhibition, the Bruce Lee exhibition in in Chinatown in San Francisco, will be of great value for people to watch it. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Tuan Lam, the founder of Go Inspire Go, and I'm here to ask you for your help and support in bringing the story of Bruce Lee to the San Francisco Bay Area. The Chinese Historical Society of America is working on this exciting exhibit called We Are Bruce Lee, Under the Sky, One Family, and I'm inviting you to join the party. With everyone's help, including yours, we think we can open the exhibit by fall of 2021 and showcase rarely seen memorabilia, personal drawings, and feature the work of innovative multimedia artists. Everyone needs to hear the story of Bruce Lee's vision, how he turned his challenges into becoming this iconic actor, athlete, and thinker who unified people of all walks of life. I'm personally inviting you to support the creation of this exhibit by donating whatever you can. With a sponsorship of $1,000 or more, you can get this fig pin produced exclusively for the San Francisco Chinatown exhibit. You'll also get a collectible 3-year membership card when the exhibit opens. The pins are only available while supplies last. So please join our family and give generously. And for more information, please go to wearebrucelee.org and follow us on all the social media channels. I'm Tuan Lam, your host. Thank you so much.